Okay. What did he say?
Why don't we say our defining statement together? Kiwanis is a global organization of volunteers dedicated to improving the world, one child and one community at a time. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clay Taylor, do we have a song today?
We do, as soon as the screen changes.
Hugh's with us now.
Oh. Robbie Wooten, are you here today? No, oh no. Well, we want to sing happy birthday to our March Kiwanians. So, and I want to hear you really loud this time. Don't be shy. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Robbie. Happy birthday to you. Yay.
Please bow with me. Our Father, we give you thanks and bless your holy name. Father, we ask for your blessings upon each individual here today for this occasion and those who are not able to be here. In all that we do, we pray that we are able to please you and carry out your work, that we might receive your wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. Father, help us to use this knowledge wisely, that we may be effective in the local, wider community. Amen.
We do.
Have a guest, David Clark, if you will stand. David, this is his third visit. He was here last week. I was unable to be here, but we have his check and his paperwork. And
Yay.
So David is from Wake Forest. He and his wife Molly live there, and so he'll be inducted in the next meeting, or maybe the following meeting, but soon. And David Clark.
Great to have you join us, David. Any others? Have another?
This must be the guest table. Fellow Kiwanis, I'm pleased to have my wife Jenny here today. She wanted to come hear the speaker. She also wanted to check out the lunch I've been talking about. Jenny,
all right. All right, nice to have you, Jenny. Birthdays, I will name the remainder of birthdays that we're celebrating this time. Margaret Eagles, Gary Pendleton, Howard Taylor, Brodie Burwell, along with Robbie that you recognized earlier.
So I brought the box for donated diapers or wipes. There's a sheet on everybody's table. If you'd like to make a credit card donation, there's a QR code on the bottom. Please check the box that says, "Am I with an organization?" as yes, and then type in Kiwanis, and we'll get an accounting of all of those contributions. We're going to keep this going, excuse me, until April 11th. So feel free to bring checks next week or donations. Thanks.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thanks. Yes. Hey, everybody. I'm going to flip the slides when I get back there, but we are so grateful to have our guest speaker with us today, Liza Roberts. She's a journalist and author who lives right here in the Triangle, and she's the founding editor and general manager of Walter Magazine. Graduate of Hamilton College in New York, and then the Columbia University Graduate School of Journalism. She spent years in the 90s covering business news for Bloomberg, CNBC, and CBS MarketWatch before focusing on art and culture, then founded Walter, a magazine that showcased it. While covering art for Walter, she became convinced that a book about the remarkable contemporary art of our state was long overdue and was honored to have the opportunity to write it. Of course, we are honored to have her come and speak to us about it today. So, Liza, I'll bring you up.
Well, thank you very much, Hugh, for that very nice introduction, and thank you all very much for having me today. It is such a pleasure to have the opportunity, sorry if I put water next to the bell, to speak to a group of people who care so much about their community, about its history, and about its future. I share your interests and your commitment to those things, and I have enjoyed very much the opportunity to cover art and culture and entrepreneurs and all kinds of things in the Triangle for quite a number of years now. And I've always been an art lover, but I did not know how much there was to know about North Carolina artists until I started writing about them for Walter magazine. Yeah, as you know, from Hugh, it covers art and culture in the Triangle. And in the course of looking for stories to write for Walter, stories to assign and include in Walter, I found myself constantly cherry picking all of the artists, visual artist stories for myself to write. They seemed to me to be the most interesting people to speak with, of all the different kinds of people I had the opportunity to interview. And in the course of doing all these interviews with artists, it became very quickly obvious to me that we live in a state, and not just a city or a region, but a state that is unusually rich in the visual arts, populated with truly world-class artists. And I was kind of amazed to learn this. It was news to me. I did not know this about where I'd come to live. And I had known that North Carolina was exceptional in so many other ways. Just think about our musicians, our music history, our chefs, our athletes, our college sports. Of course, I knew it was true about our writers, but I did not know until I'm going to start these slides now. I had not known beforehand that North Carolina is also a mecca for visual art. So the photos that will start to scroll behind me are outtakes from some of the many thousands that Lissa Gottwals took for this book, and that's the cover of the book that I wrote. They illustrate the story that I'd like to share with you today and show you little pieces of. And that story is that our visual artists are huge in number, and they are as diverse, easily as diverse as the state is itself. They are every kind of person. They are native North Carolinians, they're newcomers, they're urban, they're rural. In the book alone, they represent every age between 22 and 102. They make art out of every imaginable material. They are painters and sculptors and welders. They are weavers. They make art out of steel and glass. They make art out of tissue paper and wax. Discarded quilts, shredded documents, strips of silk, cut up wallpaper. What can't make art in North Carolina? Of course, good old North Carolina clay is in that list too. So I had the privilege over the course of a couple of years of visiting their studios all over the state and seeing their art in progress, as you can see, and learning about not only how they work, why they work, what they do with their art, but also how they live, which became a big part of the story also. And as I had these many conversations, I began to realize just how rich and varied our art and our artists were. I tried to find the book, thank you. Thank you very much. I tried to find the book that showed this story, that told this story, but I really wanted to learn more about it, but I couldn't find that book. I actually had a friend on the West Coast, very involved with art in Los Angeles. I wanted to bring this friend a book that showed her, hey, look, we've got a great art scene too, and I couldn't find the book. And so I also wanted to show it off. I wanted her to be proud of, the sort of art world that we were coming from. And so even though there were so many books about pieces of North Carolina art, pottery, for instance, of course, there's several great books about that, textiles, craft traditions, several books about individual artists. There was no single book that sort of told the larger story, that connected all the dots and showcased and celebrated contemporary art as it's made today. And this is an important part I wanted to tell too, the ecosystem that supports it. So once I knew that it was a great story because I was coming upon it left and right, but once I realized that it was a great untold story, I decided I really had to write it myself. And so after UNC Press agreed to publish it, I spent a couple years, most of it during the pandemic, which created some challenges, traveling around the state, as I say, with this wonderful photographer, Lissa Gottwals. She was my favorite photographer to work with at Walter Magazine. And when I had the contract for the book, I thought this book won't be anything like what it needs to be if I don't have the most spectacular photographer. And she was my first choice, and I was amazed and very lucky that she agreed to do it with me. So together, she and I traveled the state, and we interviewed and photographed artists, curators, gallerists, museum directors, public servants. And what I realized in the course of all these travels and all these interviews is that North Carolina is not only filled with all of these artists, as I had a strong hunch it was, it's that it's not a coincidence that they're here. And this was something that I was very excited to be uncovering as I went. I learned that they are actively coming here to make art. Many of our best artists are actively doing that. The ones who are already here are making an active decision to stay. And the reason for that is that this state fosters the making of visual art in countless ways. We not only have affordable space for the making of art, natural resources to create it with, clay being one of many examples, natural beauty and biodiversity to inspire it. I can't tell you how important that is. We also have an unusually deep well of grants and fellowships and residencies and other opportunities that support artists that are truly unique to North Carolina. We have an incredibly robust system of schools as well, and programs and museums and institutions that nurture and inspire and support art making. These institutions also collect art themselves and create art communities of their own in the process. These communities, in turn, attract even more artists. I also came to learn that these places, all these institutions, they also are not here by accident. They are here thanks to a series of really visionary decisions made in part by today's leaders, but mostly by leaders of the previous century. These are decisions to create and fund museums, as I mentioned, schools, and even to underwrite individual artists themselves, decisions that were truly groundbreaking on a national level. As I started to uncover this, I thought it was, again, amazing that I'd never seen these dots connected before. But I came to decide that it really was truly thanks to these 20th century visionaries, philanthropists, civic leaders, most of them, that the far-flung resources of what was then not at all a wealthy state and certainly very rural became an excellent ecosystem for the creation and the collection and the celebration of visual art. So you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. What are these decisions and what are these events? Perhaps the most pivotal moment came, many of you are familiar with this, in 1947 when the North Carolina legislature created the nation's very first art museum, funded with a state appropriation for the purchase of art. It's never happened before, and it really hasn't happened anywhere else except for Hawaii, as far as I've been able to uncover. A $1 million appropriation for the purchase of art created the North Carolina Museum of Art. Several other events happened right around the same time and in quick succession. The next one happened in Winston-Salem when they founded the very first municipal arts council in the nation. Around the same time, we became the first state in the country to honor the arts and humanities with a statewide award, the North Carolina Award. Some of the artists on the screen have won that award. Our legislature chartered the very first public arts conservatory in the country, the North Carolina School of the Arts, still one of the top 3 arts conservatories in the country, and really an amazingly public among them. Our statewide arts council was founded right around the same time to sustain and grow the arts for the benefit of all North Carolinians. Today, it is one of the most robust arts councils in the country. It has a $10 million plus annual budget funded by direct state appropriation that grows every year. It's one of the only statewide arts councils in the country to make grants to individual artists. That's something that a lot of state arts councils stopped doing in the 80s when Robert Mapplethorpe and other artists started making that a scary proposition, but we never stopped. We also, around this same era, became the first state to create a cabinet-level agency dedicated to art, culture, and history. Again, the very first one. So here we are in North Carolina breaking ground on all of these ways that I just happened to learn about piecemeal, and when I started weaving together this story, realized that this incredible period of time really laid the groundwork for what I was seeing as an incredible eruption of artistic creativity and bounty. They laid a fertile ground. They enabled and inspired art to be created and nurtured and funded, seen and appreciated statewide. And as I say, I believe that this led to the incredible artistic eruption that's taken place before this century, but also in the last 25 years, this quarter century. So the artists in the book who you're seeing on the screen are meant to be a representative sample of just what I'm saying. An indication, and this is really just an indication because there's so many more, but of the breadth and the depth of thousands of remarkable artists at work here today, the tip of the iceberg. So I thought I'd share a glimpse of a few more of them to you to give you a sense of this breadth and depth that I'm talking about. And I'm switching slideshows, which is next level tech skills here. All right, this is the world-renowned conceptual artist Mel Chin, who very few people know lives in North Carolina. I know a lot of people who are very savvy in the art world, and I tell them that Mel Chin lives here, and they say, "You're kidding, I didn't know Mel Chin lived in North Carolina." Nobody here does either. He's not exactly making it easy to know. He hides out in the mountains near the Tennessee border. This is him on the grounds of his house, which is a former birthing hospital, maternity hospital, in a very remote nook called Egypt Township. His work addresses issues as wide-ranging as climate change, political divisiveness, race, the environment, and community health. This is a piece that he created with the help of UNC Asheville students called Wake. He made it in the mountains and then shipped it to New York, where it's formed the focal point of a retrospective of his work that took place over all 5 boroughs of New York, and this was in Times Square. He brought it to Asheville after it was in Times Square. It came here after that. It served as the focal point for a piece about climate change. It stood in the middle of Times Square, and there was an augmented reality component where you would put on goggles and look around it, and it looked as if Times Square was under 25 feet of water. And this is meant to resemble a whale skeleton and the remains of a shipwreck. Jenny Lind is a famous opera singer from 100 years ago, is the figurehead here, and someone in Asheville put the mask on her because it was at COVID when it came up to Asheville. So he makes conceptual work like this, and again, he is well known as a genius. Oh, let me go back one, sorry. It's wood. I just wanted to say one more thing while we're looking at that one. Yeah, so the ribs it's all carved of wood, entirely carved of wood. And as I say, he made it with UNC Asheville students. He's the only visual artist in the state to ever win a MacArthur Genius Award. And the reason he lives here was, as I was saying at the beginning, he chose to come here because he said he needed space and time to make his work. This is another remarkable artist, Elizabeth Brim. She is one of many artists who came to the Penland School of Craft near Spruce Pine to learn her craft, and then she never left, and that's also a common story. She's a nationally renowned metalsmith who makes very delicate and feminine works of art like this tutu with ancient and heavy tools, many of which she made herself. In the picture where she's hammering on the anvil, she's using a hammer that was the first tool she ever made, and it's a tool she uses every day. This piece has been widely exhibited at Crystal Bridges Museum in Arkansas, the North Carolina Museum of Art, just 2 of the places her tutu has been shown. You may have heard of Scott Avett, who's pictured here. He's one of the brothers who make up the famous indie rock band. He's also an incredible figurative artist, painter. You may have seen actually an exhibit of his work at the North Carolina Museum of Art in 2020. He paints lots of things, but a lot of the time what he paints is his family, and often in somewhat of disarray. This is a bleeding, crying child and an exhausted father and another toddler on his, and I like this picture, we've all been, well, many of us have been there. He paints his wife in similar circumstances, looking exhausted and kind of messy, and I think she's a hero for putting up with that. This is an artist named Juan Logan, who's become a friend of mine. He may be familiar to some of you. He's one of our state's most accomplished contemporary artists, with a career spanning more than 50 years. Here he is, photographed in his massive studio outside Charlotte in Belmont. He makes all kinds of multimedia work, sculpture, collage, painting. The shapes of the two canvases that you see behind him here represent a repeated motif in his work. He describes it as the silhouette of a black head. You could see that it's on their sides. So if you turned it like this, there's ears and a jaw and a head. And in this case, he's used that shape to be the canvas itself. The shapes that he fills these silhouettes with are allegorical and symbolic as well. He says that they're dreams and memories and hopes and fears. And sometimes they include stars like you see here. Sometimes they're matchsticks or sailboats. And they are meaningful to him, but he does not get too drawn out on what they each mean individually. Moving along to the coast, this is an incredible environmental artist, the back of her there in the orange hat, Christina Lorena Weisner. She met Lissa Gottwalls, the photographer, and I on a freezing morning in Kitty Hawk Sound. She's assembling some of her floating sculptures here with the aid of a friend of hers. And then she took them into the water because they float. A few years earlier, she had towed these 3 sculptures, which she made out of discarded beach chairs, behind her outrigger kayak 275 miles down the Eno and Neuse rivers through the Ocracoke Inlet, and all the while recording environmental data and audiovisual information, bird song and temperatures, and water temperatures and air temperatures, and a camera that took pictures of animals on the shore. She combines these striking visual works of art that are often in unusual settings with this kind of data to make all kinds of points that are fairly subtle, but about the ecology and the climate and the world that we live in. This is a blue chip name in the North Carolina art world. Herb Jackson, a graduate of Davidson College. He got his MA from Chapel Hill and chaired the art department at Davidson for 16 years. He's one of the artists who won the North Carolina Award. This is one of his abstract canvases. They're immediately identifiable. They're in collections that you've seen all over the state. Their vibrant color, his ability to convey energy and light and sort of a sense of the sublime really makes them stand out. This is Stephen Hayes, one of the most interesting people I came across in my travels, and also probably one of the most talented. He's a Durham native, he's a Duke professor, and a sculptor. And these are pieces that he calls his support totems, these busts on these wooden planks. They represent women who have been his mainstays in life, his mother, his wife, his sister, some friends. And we photographed him, Lissa photographed him, I was there, in the woods behind his grandmother's house in Oxford. He keeps his works of art that are not currently on display in a shipping container in his grandmother's backyard because that's where he can do it for free. And I said, what are you going to have in there that we can photograph? He said, I don't know, we'll see what we can find. He pulled these really magical pieces out. It was just an incredible morning. This is a young artist very much on the rise. Damien Stammer is his name. He's a graduate of the UNC School of the Arts and has been the subject of several prominent solo group exhibitions around the country, including at Crystal Bridges Museum in Arkansas. And he's known for painting dilapidated outbuildings. This is an abstracted version of that, and they get more abstracted as he goes. In this painting, we're inside an old tobacco barn and looking out a window, and he includes, there's often a source of light and hope in his paintings. This one's much more abstracted, but they come from the same place. This is next artist is a woman named Beverly McKeever, a really spectacularly talented portrait painter. She's been a professor at Duke for more than a decade. She recently received the Rome Prize from the American Academy in Rome, which is a very prestigious prize for any creative person. She's known for her portraits of herself and of people she loves. This is a self-portrait. She calls it Still Grieving. These circles around her head are clocks that she's painted. She painted this of herself shortly after her father died. He was very close to her throughout her life, his life. And this is her dear friend Norman Lear, who you probably know from television. Beverly McKeever is one of these incredibly worldly people who happens to be best friends with people like Norman Lear, and just it slides into conversation. So when I was asking her for images of some of her paintings that she was most proud of, I wasn't at all surprised to find Norman Lear show up. But you can see her technique is quite distinct and has made her really very successful. This is a young guy, Peter Glenn Oakley from Asheville. He is a marble sculptor. He carves what he calls icons of the information and industrial ages by hand out of marble. There is something very uncanny about seeing something like a Singer sewing machine carved out of Carrara marble in such beautiful and painstaking detail, or a typewriter. Black marble is flinty, and to have achieved that level of detail and refinement with a material that will flint away and chip off very easily is nothing short of miraculous. He's also got a sense of humor, a princess phone from the 70s. Yeah, right, exactly. His work is also very well broadly collected in several museum collections. This couple, I did meet several artist couples, and these two definitely were some of the most interesting and endearing people I met. Takuro and Hitomi Shibata. They moved to Seagrove, which is the center of the North Carolina pottery world, about 20 years ago, from Shigaraki, Japan, where they were both born and where they had been apprenticed as young people to become potters. And all they had with them when they came were the suitcases that they'd brought for a summer residency that Hitomi, the wife, had in New Hampshire, and a stray cat. And they got on a bus and came down here to see this mecca of American clay, and they never left. Takuro, the husband, he now runs the clay factory, which is what they call the place in Seagrove that processes the clay dug up and turns it into a workable artistic medium. They put some amendments in it and put it through all kinds of crazy machines that are 150 years old. And he runs that whole process. And they're both incredible potters. So this is one of Hitomi's pieces. She makes these incredibly beautifully crafted, rounded, very feminine looking pieces, while her husband's, Takuro's, are much more angular and figurative often and sculptural. Here's a fellow well known to probably some of you, John Bierman, a landscape painter. He's a Greensboro native, currently lives in Hillsboro. His work has been exhibited nationally and internationally, and is in the collections of the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, the Whitney in New York, the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston, and the North Carolina Museum of Art. He lived for 3 decades on the Hudson River. This is actually a painting of Pawleys Island, but he lived for 3 decades on the Hudson River before he moved back home. And he steeped himself in the beauty of that valley and of the Hudson River School of Artists. But the South really never left him. And when he came home, his work started getting a little softer and started reflecting more of the rhythms and the sun and the light and the dark of the South. And so his paintings really are some of the most spectacular landscapes in the book and that I've encountered. So, as I say, this is just the tip of the iceberg, an extraordinarily diverse group of art and of artists. But one of the things that I took away from this experience was that they all have something really important in common. And of course, it's that they're all North Carolinians. And they reflect the place where we are and the times that we live in like nobody else can. So thank you for your time and your interest in the artists of North Carolina.
We have questions right here. Here you go, Robert.
You didn't mention any wood turners.
There are a lot of wood carvers in the book, not wood turners. I don't have a wood turner, but there isn't everybody. I wish I'd had room to put everybody in there I could in every form of art. But thank you for mentioning wood turners. They do incredible work. Yes, Phil. You can buy the book at Quail Ridge Books. You can buy it at Barnes & Noble. And actually, I didn't realize that you all sometimes sell books, or I would have brought some. But if you do want a book, I'd be happy to sign it for you. And the way to do that is if you go to Quail Ridge and you tell them you'd like me to sign it, they'll put it aside and I'll just go over there and sign them for you. So you could say, I want this signed for my wife and her name's Sally, and I'll sign it for you. So I'm happy to do that. I'm sorry I don't have them today.
P. Marvelist, the guy who makes the modern industrial stuff out of marble. I mean, wow, that typewriter. So does he have that stuff for sale?
He does. It is very expensive.
I bet.
So he currently, actually, he is one of the most interesting. I mean, all these people are so interesting. Peter Glenn Oakley is his name. He's currently at work on a 5-foot-tall vacuum cleaner, a stand-up Hoover vacuum cleaner, with the bag and everything. And he's so meticulous that so it stands, right, like a vacuum cleaner does. But were you to turn it on its side, the rollers are all there too, and that's just there, and you don't even see it, because he's so incredibly meticulous and precise. He managed to rescue that vacuum cleaner from the flood that came after Helene. His studio's on the Swananoa River, and it was completely decimated, just taken out by the river. It was under 45 feet of water. The building is gone, but he had quadruple bagged the thing and built a wooden case around it and put barbells on top of it and left it and hoped to God that it was going to be okay. And he came back about a week later, which was as soon as he could get there, physically get there, and it was okay.
Yeah, the River Arts District, it was one of the places most wiped out, and I know you've been out that way. Do you have any story about sort of like the vacuum cleaner, what has come out of that?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things, and I don't want this to sound simplistic, but because it's been a terrible, horrible blow to this community, like really unthinkable. So many artists lost their life's work and all of their materials and everything that they own. So it's not to minimize any of that, but I'll say a sort of bright spot was I was speaking to another artist who is in that category, who has lost everything. And he was living in South Carolina. He moved to South Carolina where he could be with some friends and have a roof over his head. And I said, well, what do you think is going to happen next? What's going to happen to the River Arts District? He said, I don't know, but I'm looking at a lot of cheap real estate. So, I mean, artists are so scrappy. They're so incredibly capable of doing something with nothing. And if anybody can make that part of Asheville come back, it's the very people who've lost it. It's the artists. They can do anything.
Any questions?
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
You want me to sign that down here or up there? Okay. I'm signing one of the books that I gather you give to children, which is so great.
Yes, and the only thing I do is explain to you. It's an after-school program, and it provides meals and tutoring and books for children from low-income families in Wake County. And we're just thrilled that you will sign it, and then we'll make that available.
Terrific. So I'm signing right here?
Yeah, and you can
Thank
take
you.
it with you. And
Okay,
sit down. I
super.
just didn't want
Okay,
you-
thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. Thank you so much, and thank you, our guests, David and Jenny. We're glad you have been here. And next week's speaker is, I'll let Hugh announce that.
We have Carol Lawrence. She's a longtime volunteer at the J.C. Ralston Arboretum, and she's writing a book of the history of the Arboretum and all the programs they do, and she's going to come speak to us about that.
And now the final activity for this afternoon is a special memorial resolution in honor and recognition of one of our members, Bob Brooks. And as you can see, Charlie Sawyer is going to come up and give that information.
It's a real honor to recognize Bob Brooks. Bob was a unique individual. If you sat at his table, there was laughter, there was wit, Bob was always in a good mood, and there was a lot of fun being with him. So it's particularly special to honor Bob, who left us in 2023. This is a memorial resolution in honor and recognition of Robert Nowell Brooks. Whereas Robert Nowell Bob Brooks, son of William Oliver Brooks and Mary Elizabeth Nowell Brooks, was born May 16, 1949 in Raleigh, North Carolina, and died on August 27, 2023 in Raleigh. And whereas Robert Nowell Brooks was a lifelong resident of Raleigh, graduating from Broughton High School and North Carolina State University. He worked at the North Carolina State Board of CPA Examiners for over 35 years, serving as executive director until his retirement in 2021. He previously worked for the North Carolina Department of Transportation and with his father at Brooks Appliance Company. And whereas Robert Nowell Brooks was an active member of the Raleigh JCs for several years, serving a year as executive director of the Miss North Carolina pageant. He was an enthusiastic Wolfpack fan, and he enjoyed his time with the Raleigh Sports Club and the Old Raleigh Boys Club. And whereas Robert Nowell Brooks joined the Kiwanis Club of Raleigh, North Carolina in 1988 and was an active, dependable, and valued member for many years. He served in many leadership positions, including president in 1996 and 1997, and chaired several fundraising and service projects, most notably the State Fair booth, the Raleigh Kiwanis Golf Classic, the Pancake Breakfast, and the building of a Habitat for Humanity house. He was honored as Kiwanian of the Year in 1993, served as president in 1996 and 1997, and he received the C.A. Dillon Jr. Fellowship Award, the George F. Hickson Fellowship Award, the Carl B. Hyatt Fellowship Award, and the Walter Zeller Fellowship Award. And whereas Robert Nowell Brooks was predeceased by his parents and his beloved schnauzers, he is survived by his wife of over 52 years, Camille Barnes Cammie Brooks, his daughters Caroline Brooks Drakeford, her husband Colin, and Jenny Brooks Johnston, his grandchildren Ashley Gill, Christopher Gill, Elizabeth Johnston, his brother William Brooks III and wife Sarah, his nephew William Brooks IV and wife Katie. And whereas Robert Nowell Brooks was a loving family man who opened his heart and offered sound advice and counsel to his friends, to his family, and to the members of the Kiwanis Club of Raleigh, North Carolina, who recognize him as a suitable role model for any citizen who seeks to make a positive impression upon his or her family and to leave the community a better place than he or she found it. And whereas the Raleigh Kiwanis Club of Raleigh, North Carolina, desires to recognize, honor, and emulate the life of Robert Nowell Brooks and the quality of the relationships he built. Therefore, be it resolved that the Kiwanis Club of Raleigh, North Carolina hereby memorializes the life of a loyal member, Robert Nowell Brooks, celebrates his career, and commends to all a life well lived and demonstrated dedication to his family, his friends, his church, and his community. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread upon the minutes of the Kiwanis Club of Raleigh, North Carolina, and be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be provided to his family as an expression of the affection and respect of the Kiwanis Club of Raleigh, North Carolina, for its member, Robert Nowell Brooks. Adopted unanimously by its membership, this the 14th day of March, 2025.
Thank you, Charlie. And as we do with resolutions, do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned, and we will present this to the family. Thank you all.